Is this the Dr. Ray?
What are you asking me?
Are all people mentally ill?
I have no idea.
Boy, you hit the nail right on the head there.
Now, why would I say something so dumb?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
I don't remember what I said.
You're always contagious, by the way.
Am I really that awful?
I don't care. I'm not concerned with that stuff.
And I guess that's true, but doggone.
As usual, you're doing all the talking.
Well, are you better than God?
No way.
I'm going to give you some bad news. You got a problem.
I just wanted to call and get some wise advice, hopefully.
Now, from the studios of Living Bread Radio Network in Canton, Ohio, the hometown of Mother Angelica, here's Dr. Ray.
Andrew, can you use some of your technological magic to get rid of that hopefully? I just wanted to call and get some wise advice. Hopefully. I know it. It's just like she was qualifying it right away quick, hopefully. And it was kind of a fading out, too. It's kind of like a teenage kid who said, no, I wasn't even there. I didn't even take that, really. All right, this is Dr. Ray, hopefully. Program is The Doctor Is In. This is where you call in if you wish. The number is 877-573-7825, 877-57 equal. Reasons to call in are multitudinous. Number one reason is typically to discuss a situation in your life, circumstance, something that you're figuring, okay, maybe we can put our heads together and come up with a few ideas, few notions, few options. I'm not going to do therapy here. That's for the office. Certainly don't diagnose. But we can talk, educate. Second reason probably is somebody calling regarding a previous call to help out, to share their own situation similar. That's very nice. A lot of helpful people on this program. A third reason is a generic question, something about psychology or intellect or a diagnosis or development or therapy, that whole broad umbrella of the mental health world that you don't understand. You know, we usually have to, I tell Andrew, please don't take any more of this kind of call because we've just had so many callers. Dr. Ray, what is pseudosciasis? I mean, come on. Everybody should know that. Yikes. And it's right up there with catatonic thought disorder. Come on, you guys. I'll explain it one more time if we get another call. Pseudosciasis. What else? A generic cultural type question, an insight in parenting or family life or marriage, something that you think would be helpful. This is your own kind of Instagram. The Doctor Is In, name of the program, dispensing a powerful drug. Doc is in. I am, and I've just been awarded this. EWTN sent me this little plaque that I am the only host they have, radio and television, who can take days off your purgatory because I can be so irritating if you listen to me. Yeah, the longer you listen, the more days off. 877-573-7825, 877-57 equal. My producer man, Andrew Kruchek. Call screamer Eric Dumont. He's not there. He's not even there yet. This is kind of respect I get. Oh, so you're screaming today, right, Andrew? Doing it all. Okay, good enough. Well, that only leaves you to basically take the calls, and I can sit here and sip my diet lemonade, and you can offer your thoughts. You're right there. You're right on the edge. Back when I worked at the Columbiana County Mental Health Center in Lisbon, Ohio, on Route 30. I did not know this, but Route 30 during Lyndon Johnson's War on Poverty was the demarcation line. South of Route 30 was considered Appalachia. I did not know that. And the mental health center was about 150 yards south of Route 30, Lincoln Highway. And I noticed when I was doing a lot of, I became kind of like the family go-to guy. And I don't know how it happened. I think part of it was my interest and part of it The mental health center said, Ray, you want to work with some of the families and discipline and kids and parenting? Where was I? About 3 years, maybe? 3 years, 4 years into my employ there, really started noticing an awful lot of insecurity and second guessing, lack of authority among parents. And a lot of these parents were good people, but I was kind of shocked at how much they were insecure about their parenting. So given that, all right, Max, I'll take care of that after my monologue. So given that, I started to entertain this idea. I got to write a book. As far as I was aware at that time, there weren't many books written regarding the kind of impending crisis of confidence among parents across the board. I remember thinking my own parents didn't struggle with this. They were mom and dad, and I was kid. And that was much of what guided their parenting. And it was a good, healthy guidance. Well, some of you might debate that given how I turned out. But that said, so I wrote a book. It took me 3 years. The book was the first book I'd ever written. It was called You're a Better Parent Than You Think. Up to that time, I had not even written a journal article. Well, I had my dissertation, so some people consider that a book. But short of that, nothing popular. No small little booklet, no article for a magazine. There for a while, I did some columns, Q&A columns, but that was after the book. So I wrote the book. Took me 3 years. Turned it in. No chance. Everybody said, you're not going to get any kind of response. They're going to say, who are you? It was quite fair. So I was down in East Liverpool consulting to the schools. East Liverpool, right on the Ohio River there. And I got a call from the secretary. You just got a call from the editor at Prentice Hall. Now, Prentice Hall, they did an awful lot of school stuff, but they were big. They were a New York publisher. They were huge. And they're interested in publishing your book. I was shocked. Couldn't believe it. I said, what? And apparently I touched a nerve in that book. I got to believe that the acquisitions editor who read maybe a sample chapter in my query letter thought, yeah, I'm struggling with stuff like this too. This is exactly what this guy is talking about. Yes, I'm over parenting. I'm second guessing. I'm feeling like I'm unsure I'm going to mess my kid up. I must have touched some kind of nerve there. In the book, I'm getting to it. In the book was a chapter called Is My Child Normal? And I talked about all the fretting that's so very, very common among parents about their kids' psychological adjustment. One of the subsections, and it wasn't in that chapter, it was in the chapter of how to talk yourself out of authority, was he's a special child. And what that meant was because he had either developmental issues or questionable psychological issues, and those are much, much, much more fuzzy, or there were some type of, well, I'll give you an example. I consulted to Head Start programs, several Head Start programs. I was called in on a young man who had profound hearing loss, very profound. I was called in not because of his profound hearing loss, because the teachers made adjustments and he was welcomed into the class, because of his severe behavior problems. The other kids avoided him. They didn't want any part of him. He was impulsive. He was resistant. He threw major league eruptions. He was just a significant resistor of rules and authority and even proper social interactions with other kids. As I was wont to do in those days, I talked with the parents. I wanted to get some ideas of what was going on. And it turned out that the parents felt so bad about his hearing loss, that life had ripped him off, that they would not discipline him. How are they going to make him sit on the steps, too, for his infraction because he can't hear. And I started seeing more and more of that, and I see it much to this day, which is if a child has a developmental delay or there's autism involved of some level, or perhaps there's been a trauma in his life. The most common one is the parent's divorce. What it does is it affects the parent's discipline, affects the parent's parenting. I can't ask him to stand in the corner too because life has ripped him off. He has a lower IQ, or I don't know what he understands. And what I've consistently noticed is that with enough time of that attitude, the main problem becomes the child's social behavior, his ability to follow rules and have self-control over and above his other significant special need. I've seen that over and over again. We adopted our twins when they were 4. Their early couple years was marked by a lot of chaos and neglect. They were finally removed from birth mom, placed with foster parents for about 2.5 years. Foster parents were likable enough people, but they didn't discipline. They felt guilty for the kids, given their circumstances. So when we adopted them, they were 4-something. They were pretty undisciplined, especially the boy. Very, very undisciplined. Bedtime was a problem. Eating was a problem. Temper fits were a problem. Just a lot. At one point in the kids' being in our family, it's probably 2, 3, 4, 5 months into it, I said to my wife, I said, the twins are getting way more than their share of discipline in this house. Maybe we ought to ponder lowering our standards a little bit on them. And my wife, who has a lot more innate common sense than I do, call it my psychological education, she said, "You big dummy." Well, she didn't say that, but I read eyes. She said, "Ray, our standards are the same across the family. We got to give John and Joe even more hugs and kisses to show them this is nothing personal. We're just trying to socialize them." And I had a little bit of our own kind of special child sort of situation. And what I've seen so much of is parents who do not discipline or feel guilty when they discipline or allow an enormous amount of ugly behavior because in their mind this child has already been ripped off by life and we can't put expectations on him too. I've seen that so much. And I tell the parents, wait, the world's not going to do that. The world's not going to say, therefore he has this developmental disability, so we can't expect any kind of appropriate behavior out of him. Dr. Ray, you understand, these children, they may learn differently or they may take longer to learn. Absolutely. I remember I've had parents come to me saying they were told by experts that you can't use normal discipline on these kids because they learn differently. Well, you can learn differently, but you still have to function according to certain standards. Now, it may take them longer to get it, or it may require, like we did with my twins, a lot more hugs and kisses in between. But at some point, and I've had even parents say to me, well, he's 8, but he functions like a 3-year-old. And I ask, do you have a dog? And they'll say, yes. Did you train your dog? Yeah. Your children functioning like a 3-year-old are much, 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 much more intelligent than your dog. You'll teach your dog. Do you think they are not capable of learning just because they're developmentally at age 3? Of course they are. I've seen this so often. I've seen so many. Well, do you remember the Helen Keller story with Patty Duke? Way, this is an old story, and I forget, Annie Sullivan. Wasn't Annie Sullivan the therapist deal with Helen Keller? And her parents had allowed her as a small child just to run wild. She just ran wild. One scene, she was just at dinner grabbing food off of people's plates because their view was she had been so handicapped by life. Think about it. Blind and deaf. Wow. Talk about social isolation. And they felt so bad about this that it totally altered their parenting. But what happened when Annie Sullivan got on the scene, they were nervous because Sullivan was trying to teach Helen Keller some impulse control and some routine and some expectations. And the parents had a hard time with that. But in the end, it turned out Helen Keller was one of the most admirable people of the time. So I guess what I'm saying is, if your child, as you see it, has had some rough spots, perhaps a splitting marriage, or the loss of a sibling, or some stint with an illness that has kept them in the hospital for a while, and thank God they're okay now. But if you look at this like, well, I can't really discipline them because there's extraneous circumstances here, you're not doing your child any favors. You can still gently, confidently, firmly, lovingly discipline, because you don't want a total lack of self-control to be a worse handicap than whatever it was that stayed your hand. Wow, I talked a long time. 877-573-7825. I'll get to you. This is Dr. Ray. Please give me a call.
Do you own popular index mutual funds or ETFs? If so, you're automatically own shares of companies that conflict with your moral beliefs. Ave Maria mutual funds are managed to conform to pro-life and pro-family values. Long-term investors can invest in the no-load Ave Maria mutual funds. The experienced professional portfolio managers make decisions based on investment fundamentals and pro-life values. You can learn more about Ave Maria mutual funds today at 866-AVE-MARIA or visit AveMariaFunds.com.
Welcome to Advanced Dentistry Center family. This is Dr. Metti, and our team strives to treat you like family in a loving and compassionate way as we focus on serving you in a Christ-like manner. We do this by emphasizing prevention and general well-being for a lifetime. Our private practice is small, personal, state-of-the-art, and innovative, with the goal to educate and motivate our patients in improving their oral health. It is through a partnership with you that you will achieve the goals for your smile. Advanced Dentistry is serious about the level of care we provide, with attention to details and an exceptional level of care, skill, and judgment. We are thrilled for the opportunity to serve you.
Dr. Matty and the team invite you to visit them at advanceddentistrycenter.com or call them at 248-594-9592. That's 248-594-9592. AdvancedDentistryCenter.com.
This program is brought to you by the following nonprofit underwriter.
Are you longing to hear God's voice? Lord, Teach Me to Pray, the free Ignatian Prayer Series will open your heart to His voice, to the peace you are seeking, and the only love that fulfills the human heart, Jesus. God is calling you to true joy, knowing Jesus personally. Lord, Teach Me to Pray is free. Go to LordTeachMeToPray.com, click on the red box, order the Lord Teach Me to Pray series now. Go to LordTeachMeToPray.com.
The unmistakable sound of a Hammond B3. Dr. Ray Guarendi here. Thank you for joining me. Number 877-57-EQUAL. Let's go to Max from New Mexico. Hello, Max.
Hello, Dr. Ray. Before my question, I wanted to offer you a at least partial congratulations, because I heard on Look Back Friday the intro voice that says, from Canton, Ohio, hometown of Mother Angelica, a voice added in, and Dr. Ray Guarendi. However, on ePerson Monday, they took it away.
Well, Andrew just informed me that he did that. It was impulsive and it was unplanned, and he just, because I've always whined. I've been whining a lot about maybe someday they'll say the home of Dr. Ray, but they never have. So I think Andrew, my producer man, did that. He says he'll bring it back, Max.
Awesome.
What's up?
So I had a question for you. I know you've recommended a lot when Catholics have called in asking, how do I explain this? How do I explain that? You recommend Catholic Answers. And I agree. It's very, very good. It explains the Catholic teaching very well. My question is, how do you know it's the Catholic teachings? Because I was looking into how do you know Mary was immaculately conceived when Paul says all have sinned? And it explained it I looked on Catholic Answers, it explained it very well. It was a great article and all that, but I didn't see any citations to early church fathers' teachings on that or anything of the sort. And it seemed no different than a Protestant using the scripture, explaining it well to communicate their interpretation.
Probably there was a certain amount of limitations, Max. I mean, I know there have been some books written on the Blessed Virgin being ever virgin, being considered the Ark of the New Covenant, being the kind of controversial, confusing word, mediatrix of all graces. So yeah, there's the stuff is there. I think what happened was you just read an article that was limited in its response, probably. Okay. As a matter of fact, we do have a lot of early church writings that talked about her as ever virgin. They were there. Okay. So, and if your question is how do we know they're legit, or how do we know that they're completely in compliance with church teaching? Several things. One, for me personally, I'm reasonably familiar with what the church teaches about the big stuff. And I've never seen something that they've written where I've said, whoa, where are you coming from with that? That's a little skewed. Never had that experience. Second, they've been around for 40 plus years. Okay. And so they've had a long established reputation of reflecting what the church teaches. Third thing is this, and Jimmy Akin will talk about this a lot. He'll get questions where he will say, the church has not really come out with a specific teaching on that matter. Did you know this? This is an interesting little thing. I don't want to digress too much, Max. Do you know there's really only 7 scripture verses in the New Testament that the church says there is this interpretation that Catholics are obliged to believe? Did you know
Whoa.
that? Yeah, that's right.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I assume one of them is the Eucharist. What else is there?
This is my body. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know the other 6. I did at one time, but you can find it, and you just simply write in, what are the 7 verses in Scripture, I think it's the New Testament, that Catholics are obliged to believe this particular interpretation of that Scripture.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And then there's an awful lot of websites out there that are pretty faithful to Catholic teaching. But one of the things I've noticed is that there's an awful lot, the church is very wise, there's an awful lot of, I don't want to say wiggle room, but maybe prudential judgment. That's a kind of a shibboleth that's flung around a lot. But it just means, people of good faith are allowed to ponder this and come to a conclusion. The church, for example, the church doesn't take a stance on tax policy, on what amount of your taxes should go where. They don't. They're not going to do that. But a good Catholic can say, well, I think that with my conscience and my judgment, this is how I view that kind of thing. So that's a good question, Max.
Dang. Do you have any recommendations for where to find? You said there are early church fathers writings on stuff.
Yeah, there's
like
a
Mary.
there's a 3-volume series. Yeah, there's a 3-volume series. I don't know exactly what it's called. It's called something. Andrew's going to write it out here. Max, there's a 3-volume series of all the writings of the early church fathers. Okay, and if you do call Catholic Answers, they'll give you that volume series. It's good stuff. It's really good stuff. Dr. Ray. Thank you for joining me here on The Doctor Is In. I just got some study results back. Found out that more radios are tuned to this show than any other kitchen appliance. I was not even aware this was in existence. The Writings of the Early Church Fathers, Max, if you're still listening, is a 38-volume collection of writings from the first 800 years of the church. Collection is divided into 3 series: Ante-Nicene, in other words, before Nicene, and post-Nicene. Wow. All right, so they got the Apostolic Fathers, got the Early Church Fathers, and I think they're divided up into topics. So there's an awful lot of that directly addresses some of the beliefs surrounding the Blessed Virgin. All right, got that. It is easy not to want to discipline a child who looks as though life has not been fair to him or her. It is easy to look at this child's frustrated by the hurdles, obstacles in his or her life. I hate this his or her type stuff. It's kind of why we can use their, even though that you singular nominative and the plural predicate. So that's it. I'm going to just use their. In their life. You can see their frustration, maybe, because of what they're going through. Parents will tell me, for example, that their 13 or 14 or 15-year-old is reacting very, very strongly to the parents splitting up, becoming moody, more difficult, more surly, more resistant to rules and limits, and so it's very tough. Very tough for the parent to actually apply some normal discipline. Not unusually, they will come to my office and they will see, for example, that the child's behavior has gotten a lot worse, and they will point to the particular stressor, the breakup of the marriage, or the developmental delays, or the diagnosis of ADHD, or some trauma in their lives. They might point out, for example, that their 5-year-old is becoming much, much, much more resistant and difficult because mom had a baby. And they'll say it's because of the baby, struggling for attention, his share of the attention. Much of the time, it's mainly because of an alteration in the parenting. Because I'll ask mom, I'll say, well, baby takes a lot of your time, right? Oh, yeah, I'm tired, I'm exhausted. So it's safe to say it's easier not to follow through with the 5-year-old. Oh, yeah, my parenting's got a lot more sloppy. So we really don't know how much of it is he's upset over the fact that there's this interloper in his family, and how much of it is your parenting's changed. So we explore that. We see what exactly has happened. But it's not unusual for parents to come into my office, and the main presenting problem is just difficult. The child is very, very difficult. And as we explore, we find there is something that the parents think is a special circumstance for this child. And because of that special circumstance, they have had more of a hands-off approach in their parenting, a more permissive approach in their parenting, a more too much talk, too little action approach in their parenting. And because of that, the child has gotten progressively more difficult. I see that. When I talked about that in the Better Parent book, How to Talk Yourself Out of Authority, the section, He's a Special Child. As hard as it is, you still establish what you have to do to socialize and moralize the child at their level. If there are developmental delays, or, for example, and I've heard this from adoption workers. They will say, if a child is adopted, say, for example, at an older age, 5, 6, 7, really do not do any disciplining for the first year. because the child has to acclimate to the home. First of all, I remember thinking, oh boy, if you wait a year, I don't think the child will acclimate. I think it'll just get uglier and uglier. Yeah, you do what we did with the twins. You discipline when you have to, but you show it a lot of love when you have to. But you just simply don't have this hands-off approach because this child has been in foster care for 6 years, maybe 3 different foster homes, and then he's coming to your home, and you're not going to establish expectations and teaching. Yeah, I've heard adoption workers say this. I had parents come to me and say, we were told not to discipline. We were told, or if we were to discipline, it should be very, 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 very mild and few and far between. I'm thinking, how ugly is it getting? And they'll say, well, we're here. I go, yeah. So all that said, he's a special child, is one of the top parent paralyzers of loving, confident, strong discipline. And the irony with that is that when your discipline is good, and I mean by that, it is consistent, it's calm, it's follow through, you just discipline a whole lot less. It's not a matter of, if my discipline's really good, I'm going to be disciplining all the time. No, it's the exact opposite. The children know what the expectations are. They know pretty predictably how you will respond, and they don't test it. Oh, they may get sneaky. My twins got sneaky a lot. But in terms of actual defiance, that kind of ended within the first couple of months that we had the kids. But we noticed that when we visited in the foster home, if we would have just looked at the kids and said, "Ooh, what is going on inside their heads?" I knew enough to look at the dynamics, and my wife did too, to look at the dynamics in that foster home and recognize that the kids were allowed pretty much to run wild. And I knew that the behavior of the kids didn't reflect who they were. We didn't know who they were. We just knew what had been developing, particularly over the first 4 years of their lives. 877-573-7825. We got lines open. A lot of times people are reluctant to call late in the show because they figure, I'm not going to get on. We'll get you on. We'll get you on if you have a question about something in your life, circumstances, or just something you don't understand about psychology or its interface with religion. Be delighted to talk with you about that. I'm Dr. Ray. Doing the show with my eyes closed. I only open them to see what the next caller is. Dr. Ray Guarendi here. Program Doctor is In. Monday through Friday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Co-production of EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network and Ave Maria Radio Communications with my producer man and call screamer today, Andrew Kruchek. Elizabeth's calling from Oregon. Like many grandparents, she is sitting on the first bleacher seat watching her own offspring, or maybe offspring-in-law, doing certain things, and she's feeling pretty helpless. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call.
Certainly.
Should I just jump in?
Surely. Certainly, and surely, yes.
Oh, thank you. I have a son who was married. They are now divorced. The marriage dissolved, was actually annulled because of, there are other reasons, I'm sure, but the stated reason is they have one son, and my son and his ex-wife see this little boy very differently. He has been, I guess the proper word is neurodivergent. He's been diagnosed with autism. He lives far away from us. The way I've supported the last year and a half since the divorce is just to go to Chicago as many times as I can, about every 6 weeks. The problem is that my ex-daughter-in-law sees this little boy as a little girl and has transitioned him at school to be called a girl's name. My son cannot, in all good conscience, follow that. He insists on calling his little boy his given name, Henry. And my son, his whole family, his siblings, are all standing behind him and calling him Henry. So we have this, I feel for Henry. And Henry has been recently, through his pediatrician, Chicago's a tough place to get good help. Through his pediatrician, has been referred at the ripe age of 8 to a gender therapist. So we are faced with, a step removed in trying to be as, to do the right thing, basically. And I just wondered if you had any words of wisdom. He's coming to see us next week. My son and his son, Henry, are coming to see us next week. And when he's with us, doctor, of course, he's got long hair. But when he's with us, he's just a little boy. I don't know is he a macho little boy? No. Is he a bright little boy that likes the dirt and plays around with all the things that little boys and little girls do? Yeah. My son feels like his childhood has been robbed from him, thinking about things like, what sex am I supposed to be, instead of just all the little things that little kids should be enjoying, being challenged by, etc. So, does your son have any custody at all? Is he 50-50? Yes, it is not 50-50. The ex-wife was a stay-at-home mom, and so she has more. My son gets to have him once a week, and then every other weekend. Mm-hmm. And you have no idea, your son has no idea why his ex-wife is thinking, I need to alter this young man's gender? Because my understanding is that he started wanting to order skirts and wear skirts, and he has some sensitivity issues. There's no question about it. And so for a long time they didn't cut his hair because he would. This speaks so to the heart of what your monologue was about, but because he didn't want to do that. So his hair got longer. He liked to wear skirts. And I think she considers herself an open and responsible parent. And she started talking with him about being a girl. And this is where we are. Your son is not going to go in that direction. So when Henry is with him, he's essentially going to treat Henry as a little boy. Yep. They go to church together. What will she do about it? What will she do about it? Will she fight him? Will she take him back to court? Will she say he is, and this is the irony of this whole thing, he is messing up my son who really wants to become a girl and he's not respecting it, so therefore he's damaging to my son's well-being? Would she do that? We do think that could happen. My son is ready for that. He feels that because we know that the hormone blocking drugs are going to be on the table in the next couple of years. But my son has told Henry way when he first was notified that his name was going to be changed at school, that he said, Henry, you will always be Henry to me. Just know that you are Henry. Well, the interesting thing too is I wonder what's going to happen at school.
in terms of this kid getting picked on.
Oh, it's so sad. I was a volunteer in the classroom when I went, but Henry asked me to stop coming because it is hard, Dr. Ray, to see your little grandson dressed up like a girl. But he still let me come to school, but I would call him Henry because it was just, that's how I know him. And then he asked me to stop coming to school. And
that
we
was
both know that
because
kids can be cruel at school.
Elizabeth, why did he ask you to stop coming to school?
Because I call him Henry, and he goes by Fiona at school.
Okay. Well, I can't comment on what it is that is moving mother to move him. I can say this, though. There is research, and you might want to tell this to your son, that if there are hormone blockers and quote-unquote gender-affirming chemicals, chemical treatment, the mortality rate, research has indicated that the mortality rate of any kind is up to 3 times more. Okay, so that's just an actual physical risk. So now, obviously, with a kid getting to be 18, his mortality rate's pretty low. Let's say it's 1 in 1,000. Well, okay, now it's going to be 3 in 1,000. But still, okay, it's up to 3 times more of any kind. I think what's going to happen, until we start to look at this in a much broader perspective. For example, one might say, and again, I can't comment because I don't know, but one might say that there is indication. Well, there's 2 things here. One, a disproportionate kids who have an autism diagnosis have gender confusion. The research has pointed that out.
About that.
Okay. And 2, there is indication of some kind of channeling that can take place. The parents or the adults, or sadly, the mental health people, the pediatricians, the hospitals, everybody can channel this kid. So here's an 8-year-old. Here's an 8-year-old who says, I want to wear a skirt. Okay. If they would have said, well, no, honey, you're a boy. Boys generally don't wear skirts. He might have just totally let it go. But because it was interpreted as he's got some kind of gender confusion, well, we have to affirm it. Yes. And in affirming it, it teaches it. So I can't say, I don't know, I'm not there, but that is happening. That's a given.
Well, I will tell you, doctor, that I firmly believe that's what's happened.
And your ex-daughter-in-law, how she sees life, her views of various things, and how much she is influenced by the narrative that now comes to dominate so much of the way we think about this whole gender matter. And I think there's going to be clashes between her and your son at this point, and it's going to be interesting to see how the courts will rule. It's scary because my sense is, at least up to this point, what I am somewhat familiar with is that the courts tend to lean toward the parent who says, I got to affirm what this kid says he is.
And my son's feeling is, in the state of Illinois, you better believe that. Yeah.
It may be, and again, you can't say, but it may be that at some point Henry will say, you know what, I want to be a boy. I don't like this.
Yeah.
I don't like all this happening. And I think that his dad treating him like a boy is well within dad's rights, especially since this little one is 8 years old. And the younger you are, the more confused you can get about this stuff.
Yes. So it's not, I've had some acquaintances say, oh, how confusing for him that he's going by these 2 different names. But I said, well, we can't, in all the consciousness, call him anything but Henry.
Well, the confusion could be stated here, Elizabeth. The confusion could be stated that's this little 8-year-old boy, and we really don't know why, and I can't comment on why because I don't know all these details. We really don't know why he's decided I'm in the wrong body. And in fact, your son doesn't see anything regarding that kind of confusion because when he's with him, he simply becomes a little boy comfortable in his own skin. Yeah. So one might raise the issue, what is the dynamic between mom and son? Again, I can't know. But at this point, your Your son has every right to say, this is my son. I don't see any of this confusion at all. It does not spill over into our home. He's an 8-year-old boy comfortable in his own skin. Elizabeth, thank you. I'm way past break. Thank you for the call, dear. This is Dr. Ray.
For 2,000 years, Christians have lived and worshipped in Lebanon. Today, that last stronghold of Christian faith in the Middle East is under immense pressure, violence, economic collapse, and political instability. If we want this ancient Christian community to remain, now is the moment to stand with them. Join us for the Lebanon Appeal fundraising dinner Thursday, June 25th at 6:30 at the Christ the King Parish in Ann Arbor. Learn more and register at avemariaradio.net/events. The Heart of the Interior Life with Elizabeth Jangle.
In the 13th rule of St. Ignatius of Loyola's 14 Rules for the Discernment of Spirits, St. Ignatius guides us to the importance of speaking about the deceits of the enemy with one's good confessor or another spiritual person in order to break the spiritual silence. In Rule 13, St. Ignatius teaches, speaking of the enemy, that he perceives he will not be able to succeed with the malicious undertaking he has begun, since his manifest deceits have been revealed. Father Timothy Gallagher writes, his teaching is very clear. If dedicated persons are spiritually burdened by the enemy's wiles and persuasions, they are to speak of these with an appropriate spiritual person, knowing that, in doing so, they will progress toward freedom from those wiles and persuasions. What spiritual burden are you seeking freedom from today?
For more information, visit avemariaradio.net.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Ray Guarendi. We know personally that when a loved one passes suddenly, we are relieved that a will was already in place. At mycatholicwill.com, a legal will is as simple as 15 minutes filling out information about your family. Thanks to our partnership with mycatholicwill.com, when you use the promo code AVE, A-V-E, your will is absolutely free. No hidden costs whatsoever. Visit mycatholicwill.com. Oh, boy, oh, boy. 15 years ago, I never would have got a question like that, ever. Let's go to John from Virginia. Hello, John.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure, sir. You're up.
So, back around 1997, my two kids, I was divorced with joint custody. My two kids, my daughter wanted to do this thing where she was going to stay all day at the mall, a local mall, and then meet my ex-wife, and they would go shopping after my ex-wife got off work. And I told her that she couldn't do that. She was like 14 with her, and she was going to go with her 14-year-old cousin. So the whole thing blew up into this huge fight, and they ended up divorcing me as a parent, both kids.
Can they do that? Didn't you have visitation? Didn't you have some kind of divorce agreement?
They had a like a lawyer ad litem. Is that what it's called?
Guardian ad litem.
And then the lawyer taught them that they could just not go if they didn't want to go.
Okay. So it's been 30 years. You haven't seen your kids?
Almost.
Wow. Have you
now
tried
to? I mean, they're like 40. They're 42 and 40, 42 and 44.
Have you tried contacting them, John? Have you tried contacting them?
Yeah, I've contacted them.
And they don't respond?
The problem is that the same problem exists now as did back in 97 and 98.
So their mother just basically has turned them against you.
Yeah. And
so
the problem isn't me. The problem isn't me. I'm not trying to engage with them for my benefit. But apparently whatever happened has affected them because neither one of them have ever been married or had kids, or they don't seem to be functioning.
Well, the question here is, and I only got about a minute here, so the question is, what do they do when you try to contact them?
We were we had some normal interaction for a while, but I started to realize that there was a problem because, like, for example, one time I was driving from Virginia to D.
John, I'm telling you, you're gonna have to call me back because I've only got about 40 seconds here. So what I would suggest to you is if you continue to have some kind of contact with them, and watch out if you comment too much upon the way they're living their lives, because if you do, they're going to shut you off again. They're probably not going to want to hear any kind of correction or comment on what they're doing in their 40s. That would be risky turf for you to enter into right now because you've had such a thin relationship with them over these years. Give me a call back in the future and I can ask some more questions about what's going on. Maybe we can give you some definitive direction. This is Dr. Ray. Thank you so much for joining me here on The Doctor Is In. Delighted to have your company. Thanks, Andrew Kruchek. Thank you, EWTN, and all your many, many stations for allowing me to talk to the folks. Walk with God. That's the infinite walk of His love. Be at peace.
For information on Dr. Ray's presentations, books, and CDs, visit drray.com and follow him on Facebook and Instagram. The Doctor Is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.